why we got. So, well, welcome back to everyone. We've had, this is our seventh teaching talk, and thanks for those of you participating online. One of you, we don't know who you are, so if you want to identify yourself, you could say something on the chat. We have our repeat visitors here. I think many of you have been to the previous teaching talks, and just today I was laying out a series of topics and ideas for the next quarter or two, this quarter and then also next quarter, just different topics. And so if you ever have an idea for something, you can send them my way and we can get a group of people. For example, I wanted to do something in the future on integrating the classroom with student services. It's a topic I think many of us have been interested in for years. And now that we have meta majors and guided pathways, there's more connections maybe to be made between, I'm looking at Larry, thinking about guided pathways. There's maybe more connections to be made between the classroom setting and, say, careers. We've been talking about bringing speakers to campus, seminars, and integrating more of, say, even the student life side of the college with what we're doing in the classroom. I think personally the Kaidu Kickoff is an example of something where you can really think about taking what we do in the classroom and connecting it to other services on campus and making a more meaningful, integrated student experience. So that will be coming up later in the quarter, I think. And then we won't do one next week, but Talk 8, and I will send these all out, will be 2 weeks from now, January 21st, and we'll focus on your favorite effective or less than effective teaching method, and to see if we can share and have some conversations about what methods work for us and what methods have been failures and how we improve. And I'm not looking at but in social science we have challenges, of course. We've talked about this in the last couple of talks about when you deal with political topics or conversations, sometimes you have to adjust how you're teaching relative to, say, the student emotion in the classroom, which was one of our, I thought, really conversations we had maybe 3 talks ago. And then we also talked about nurturing and over-nurturing and empathy. So building on what we've been doing, say, last quarter, I think we can continue to bring up more conversations. If you have ideas, please send me an email, share those with me, and then we can see what really interests faculty and have conversations around those topics. It can literally be anything. Also, those of you who have departmental interests, I know, I think in mathematics, just because of state regulations, the number of part-timers employed by the district in math has gone down. But if you ever want to do something specific to your adjuncts in psychology or whatever discipline you teach in, and we could tailor a workshop specific to that field, and we could have conversations about reaching out to part-time faculty in more effective ways, particularly given their challenges that they often deal with if they're teaching in more than one institution and dealing with the freeway flyer kind of situation that is certainly unfortunate. So enough sort of introduction. So again, Elizabeth Loudon, Director of Dual Enrollment and Outreach. Right. Welcome back. Larry Green, Mathematics, and JD Duerk teaches History and Political Science. And I'm Scott Lukas. I'm actually teaching a sociology class this quarter online, and I teach some of the promise classes, and then my role is called Faculty Chair of Teaching and Learning, so doing a lot of the stuff that we're working on today. So the topic today is, since it's our first week of the quarter, we have certain things on our minds, and maybe, if it's something you can share on camera, share that, right? But I have a lot on my mind, actually, with the current political situation in the world, but I won't talk about that, right? And you heard about this a lot in the hallway from me. But I do have some things on my mind as well about teaching. So I wanted to use this opportunity to say what's happening in your world. What are you most focused on in the first week back? And it may not be your first week back, but we're open again, and this is our first week of classes. So it's an opportunity to see if maybe we're thinking about some of the same issues and just how we can collaborate on some conversations about those issues. And if no one has something I can start, or I'll wait. Well, one thing I was thinking about, so I'll kick it off. So as I said, I'm teaching a sociology class, Race and Ethnic Relations, Social 107, and it's actually a great class, but it's a class that Sara Pierce is here, World Languages Chair, and you're chair this year, right?
Yes.
Yeah. welcome back.
Thank you.
And so this class, Race and Ethnic Relations, has, I would say, struggled in the past when it's been offered in the face-to-face classroom. And I think a lot of students, the perception is, don't want to take a class like that because they think it's going to be controversial. Since we've offered it online, it's always been 20 plus students, which is great. And I took the class over. I won't get into it, but we had a part-timer hired late in the game. We didn't get the training done for Canvas certification. So I took the class over, and as I was taking what I used in the past, the thing I was thinking about to kick off the quarter was, what was effective in the past and what are some things that need to change. And in social sciences, I think one of the things we deal with is sometimes, not that things go out of date, but situations in the world change. Just not, again, I said I wouldn't be too political, but I think in the age of the Trump presidency, there's like so much to talk about, say, relative to race or gender, other topics. A lot of my colleagues in the field of cultural heritage have been talking about just some of the president's threats to Iranian cultural sites and so forth on Twitter. So I'm always thinking about, like what's current, what's happening now, and how should I adapt my class? And I think some of that maybe I will do on the fly because there's foundational stuff I'm trying to teach. But then we may go into a certain, hey Matt, come on in. Do you want to join our webinar? So.
Oh, no, I'm just going to put a clock in here.
Okay. We're working, by the way, on the clocks today, and I guess the Wi-Fi signal, they're old school clocks, and the Wi-Fi signal doesn't always go to the clocks. So,
yeah, this took about 12 times to get this one done.
Okay, cool. So, in any case, I'm always thinking about, I guess, doing the class where there's a second, third, or 20th time. What do I need to do to update that class? And sometimes I think maybe because of the subject I'm teaching, I'm looking at human social science. Not that others of you don't do this. I'm sure all the time there's a new mathematical thing that comes out or whatever that requires. No, there is a new theorem. Okay.
Not at community college level.
I don't know. And I don't know if it's a good or bad thing in the social sciences, but I think sometimes we are required to think about, well, what, and we all do this part. What worked last time? What didn't work? How can I adopt it for the current quarter teaching? So that's what I've been thinking about. I don't know if any of you have been having that same conversation in your head about how to change things this quarter versus last quarter or the year before, depending on when you taught your class.
Yeah, I would say last fall did a history hike over by Silver City with Nevada State Parks,
Okay.
And so I was like, okay, I need to start working more of Virginia City and mining and everything, because we have a California history class, but in U.S. history we certainly could at least take part of a week and talk a bit about Virginia City. So I'm bought some books on Nevada history, so I'm working that in. And certainly with political science, like American government politics in particular, it's always changing. With every new round of Supreme Court decisions or whatever is happening, there's always changes to be made. So like I decided to work in inequality as a policy issue. So it's always changing, something this quarter. If one of the next, there's never 2 quarters that are the same, actually. I have like 10 new pieces I'm using this quarter for the classes, so it's never the same.
And I think for you, I think back feeling old, 22 years or whatever, when I was in your situation, coming in, it's your second year, but taking over the 2 departments, and you're kind of putting your stamp on things as well, which I found at the time when I did that exciting and also challenging, because the excitement is like you get to put your own stamp on there. But then the challenge is, finding time to do all that, because I know you've been busy rewriting classes and doing new ones, and so probably part of that, what you're doing is just like your own uniqueness in your areas of expertise, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's part of it, yes. I also think it's just like the local, like I'm now living at Winter now over a year, and so it's time to work.
I don't know if you're local yet.
I mean, I
1 year, I don't
I'm saying
know.
that, what I'm saying is,
What
I've
is
been
local?
here a year, so I need to work something in. I can't ignore the local elements. Maybe I could just not ignore the local elements.
Yeah. And you said you do history hikes.
Well, we did, like, one student I'm with
Yeah.
Nevada State Parks, we did. If they offer that in the future, I'd like to do it again.
That's really cool.
Nevada State Parks offers a hike up to go see one of the old mills, like a 6.5 mile hike we did. So we went to check out one of the old mills that they're restoring, actually. They're going to turn it into a museum.
That's really cool. Great. Damion Estrada just walked in over his education.
I would say,
Sarah?
having just walked out of class, I was just in a new class that I'm creating that's hybrid, and I've never offered a hybrid class before. And that's had its own set of challenges, knowing what is the most appropriate thing to offer in the online format and what's the most appropriate thing, beneficial for students to offer in the face-to-face format. I've realized it's double prep. But it's definitely been interesting for me to think about how I can offer different cultural topics to them pertaining to what they want to learn. So I think we do our definite Aztec web lessons and historical aspects of the Spanish 101, but I was thinking when I walked out of class, there are two students in there, one that has a girlfriend that is from Spain and one that wants to go to Spain, and then one wants to go to Peru, and due to the fact that there's 21 countries that speak Spanish as the official language, trying to tailor the class more to what the students want than just coming with a prescripted cultural aspect, obviously the grammar and the cultural topics, but maybe being able to lean out a little bit. Maybe I've been a little bit more prescriptive in the past, so that's something I've been thinking about.
Have you ever found, I've tried a little bit of that in the past, there was one class I started, this was like 15 years ago. It was a smaller class, and I said to the students, okay, we're going to co-create the syllabus. And I thought it was going to be great and this sort of democratic thing, and it was a disaster. They were looking at me like, well, you're the teacher, you're supposed. So do you run into that where you ask them and
I haven't really done it to that level, which I believe probably would, because I think they don't even know. I mean, coming out of your syllabus creation, I don't even think they know what they should want to know. I don't even know if they know what they want to know. It's like when you walk into a class and if you don't know, especially in a Spanish 101, I don't even think. I look at them and ask a simple question, like, what percentage of people in Lake Tahoe do you think speak Spanish? 10%? No. I mean, even being aware, I don't think they know enough to do that. But I think in a higher level class, maybe if you're a history major or anthro major or math major, and maybe not math, but later on, being able to co-create, I think it is a good teaching methodology. I just don't know if in the beginning classes if it's
maybe you have to wait a little bit.
Maybe even just creating a pool of options and letting people choose.
I find when you produce structure to it, it's much easier for them because they're actually used to a very prescribed, structured way of learning in high school. And they've had little creative freedom. Less and less, as the years go on and curriculum changes and standards, and we're trying to push them into making life decisions really early now. And I find that it's intimidating for them to actually have creative freedom. We think, this should, help them kind of grab onto these topics. And that's true, it can. But it requires all this kind of lead up and preparation for them to be able to be oh wait, I can, my perspective is valid. I can bring it forward. I find that that's the challenge. And you can do it in a lot of different contexts, and they're just like crickets. And it's not because they don't have interest, it's because it's just a really foreign request to ask their input. More and more, I'm finding that.
I feel like in the first week, that's one thing that I was telling you that we have a student in common. She's taking my online class, and I said, oh, good, she's in there. And she's a student council, and she's going to be really active and participating. That's the other thing I'm looking at in the first week is, do I have any repeat customers? You get kind of, I don't want to call them groupies, but students who like your classes or style, and then they'll take multiple classes with you. So I don't want to say it makes it easier, but it gives you an opportunity to think oh, good, okay, those students are going to carry some of the discussion load, or if there is something I want to do independent, or to really ask them for their active participation in assignments, then there's maybe a critical core there. The scary thing, like for me last quarter doing the 3 Promise classes, I didn't have any of those students before. They're brand new, and of course the Promise program really is about brand new students, mostly straight out of high school, with a couple exceptions. And that can be really challenging because you have no idea what to expect. You don't know if they're going to like your style. And so that I think is always no matter how many years I've been teaching, is a scary part of the first week of classes, even in online, not just in the face-to-face, where you're if you don't know anyone in there, what are they going to think of this approach? Are they going to like the readings, the topics? And so you're hybrid. These are you've never had these students before, right? So
and a lot of them, I asked today how many have never taken an online class, and it was about a third have never taken an online class. I'm trying it to try to get a better face representation, especially in the winter quarter starting in Spanish 101. It hasn't done very well in the past. And so I was hoping offering it less time in face and I have over 15 students, so that's very positive. I just don't know how it's going to go. I would say, you guys are my little guinea pigs, and we're going to try how this. But I think it's going to be successful.
Okay. And so they have to, for hybrid, would they have to live? They'd have to live in Tahoe, right? Or could they?
They have to.
So it's not like they could just come in a few weeks. Okay.
No,
So
we
that's
have
a challenge.
1 day a week class for
okay.
3 hours.
Well, it does give you more flexibility.
It does.
And that's not always, I think, a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, assuming you can get done what you want to get done in that.
Yeah, I mean, for my subject specifically, I'm trying to do more of the spoken and listening exercises in class, and then doing more of the writing and the reading and the comprehension online. That's my intent. We'll see how it works out, and just giving them more. I'm doing like the opposite of a flipped, I guess I would say. I'm giving them the lecture in class because I feel that's where they need me, instead of watching it online and then having them practice online.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Yeah. And it's great timing, and maybe just a little plug for those of you out there, one person up there, and those of you here, with their CDC OEI grant, which is primarily focused on career technical education. We had a conversation with Carla, who teaches sign language, ASL, and we're talking about doing more with hybrid. Another area would be wilderness education. We've also talked about hospitality and culinary. So there are fields, and I think language is one of those. I remember all my language classes, and the language classes are super hard. And I think if you have some of that in person, you can do maybe the hard stuff there, and same thing in wilderness and culinary, safety stuff that you can't do online. And then maybe the virtual part could be like more of the practical policy stuff that you're teaching the students in wilderness, or trainings that don't require like a face-to-face component. So if you have ideas for that, or there's money available, we're trying to work things out with the grant. It's very fluid, but I know we talked about ASL as a possibility because there's a huge demand for interpreters, probably nationwide, but certainly we've heard in the state of California. So I think it's great timing to do some hybrid experiments.
I would say one other thing that just to kind of piggyback off the Promise students, and just in general my first classes, and I'm sure that we all do this, but I think figuring out a way that you can engage the student individually. I feel like I have a pretty good skill of, if I have 30 students, I can get their names for sure by the end of the class. It's probably the language learning thing. But, and also have them right on the back when they're introducing themselves. Oh, I want to be going to medicine, or I want to do this. And then usually I can, connect with them right away. I'm like, wow, you want to be a nurse? You better learn Spanish, because that's very important. Or you want to travel to Peru? That's really cool. You want to, and so if you can make those connections, especially the first 2 weeks, I've really had great success of, even if they don't love my teaching style, hooking them in to say, I pay attention to you alone. And I know that's hard to do in bigger classes and maybe discipline specific, but it's really been helpful. Like, I can tell you already know enough about the students that I just had to call them out in the comments and say, oh, how's this going? What class are you in? It might be the nature of the discipline I teach, because obviously we just talk and talk and talk and talk. But that's been very helpful, I think, just to hook them in right at the beginning of the quarter. Come see me in the office hour. Yeah.
That's really important. And I think there are ways to do that in DE as well. I mean, you're doing face-to-face and DE combined, but the welcome video and some of those other techniques can be effective. I find with the DE class, the hardest thing maybe the first week is getting the students rolling, right? Because some wait maybe till, if my assignment is due on Saturday, say, they'll wait till Friday night to finish it. So that doesn't happen when you have that first face-to-face meeting, because most of the students, I think particularly the first day of class, it's usually good attendance because they want the policies, the rules, the grades, the assignments, and the syllabus, of course. So it is a little hard, I think, with the DE class, because the feeling is maybe you can kind of, casually roll into that first week of classes. So I struggle with that a little bit too.
I have a way to make that not happen.
What, a quiz?
Part of the students, it really works. Is that there's a mandatory orientation.
Oh.
I actually give it on Sunday and Monday.
2 times.
And then 2 times it's a repeat. They don't have to go to one. If they can't make either of them, that's okay. I record it. They have to write a 5-day paper.
Oh.
So guess what? They want to come the first day, and they start day 1, and they get there. Or they write a 5-day paper.
You do this virtually then?
Uh-huh.
Oh, virtual.
Yeah, on Zoom.
On Zoom.
Yep, on Zoom.
And
It's
what
live.
do you cover during that orientation?
I go through the syllabus, I go through strategies for success, I show them the first week's assignments, Same thing we would do in a face-to-face class when we were doing, the first half hour of class.
And they're able to participate.
Yep, it's Zoom, so they can talk, they can chat, they can do whatever.
No one wants to write the 5-page paper.
And they can write it, but I'll tell you, 30% are writing 5-page papers.
30%.
Yep, a lot more than last quarter.
And how much percent?
Or they get dropped. I'd say they get dropped from the class if I don't get it. Because that's my measure of class participation in the first week of class. Because we're supposed to say, are the students participating?
Is this
They're
for
not, we're
stats?
supposed to drop them. Yep.
We're gonna do that.
You have to be strict or they just drop out.
I like that, Larry.
Well, that's, I mean,
JD, it might be your new strategy.
I know, I'm thinking about
that's well, I think that might, I bet that is your strategy, right? I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, because it's like you said before, I mean, it should be consistent throughout, so that people know up front what they're getting into and having something there.
And then they can choose not to.
Yeah, I mean, you
Then
don't
they
have
have
any choice.
they have informed decision making.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, and you've
Yeah.
recorded it, so they can't be like, well, but you never told us that. It's like, well, actually, on the very first day, in my Zoom recorded thing, you can see I went over the syllabus, and here's exactly where I stated that policy. It's great.
And a week before the first day class, I text them all. Because I know they never read their college email. So I text them all and let them know about it. And
You show up at their house?
no, but they look at the text, they don't read the college email. And they just don't. But texting works. And I get a few, kickbacks where it doesn't work.
Yeah.
They give a false number. Some students give a false number.
From what, for the.
So that they know ahead of time, and I also say, hey, if you can't make the Sunday one, if you can't make that Monday evening one, give me another time on Monday or Tuesday, I'll take it for you.
Are they mostly enrolled by then? Like the week before the class?
Oh, my class fills up months before.
Oh, okay.
They're all enrolled.
How, I mean, so
I have a long waiting list every quarter.
the quarter, I mean, I'm curious what the Sunday part of it is.
The Sunday is because I found that's when most people can make it, actually, for all my students.
I believe
They don't
that.
have to go Sunday, they can do Monday instead. Or they can choose
But
another
it's
time. if
before
they
the
want.
quarter starts.
All they do is that.
So, yeah, but it's like,
Oh,
is
because
it,
it's before it starts.
is everything available on that Sunday?
You can make it available.
It's just campus. Yeah, just
So I
make
could
it.
actually go in for a student or whatever.
If you open the
Yeah.
class, you
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
open it whenever you want.
And you can
Oh.
click on there, that whole thing about students can only participate during these dates. You can unclick that and then they can get in there.
Or you can make the date Sunday.
Or you make the date Sunday.
Hey.
Like I
Yeah.
know Christina
That's
opens
what I
her
do.
class on Sunday or Saturday before, just to give students an access to look and see what they're in for. I mean,
And I do the same thing.
yeah.
I do that, and I was looking, and I mentioned the one good student, and I think it's important maybe not to prejudge, right? Because, well, the one good student I know of, because the other students in there I haven't had before, so there could be 19 other great students, but I noticed there were only 2 students who I opened it early as well, who actually participated, on the activity monitor. So that's the other thing too, and I like your idea, but I
So
don't know.
I have a question regarding discussions, something
Yeah.
I've been thinking about. So I know some instructors set their discussions, the initial posting to be like on a Wednesday or whatever, and then the last posting to be, do you use that way and not just say there's one date that the discussion is due?
I do Thursday and Sunday.
Thursday and Sunday?
Yeah.
I do, it opens at Friday at 12 a.m. The first component was really just 2 parts. It has to be done by 11:45 Sunday. Then the next part by Tuesday, 11:45, and the last part by.
It's 3 parts.
So yes, it's like just.
Yeah.
Otherwise, then I can participate. Otherwise,
Well, and I feel like when you're saying they don't get in, they don't jump in, they don't operate, I feel like that's a good way to at least give them the carrot to come along, right?
Yeah, I've thought about that, definitely trying to set up, instead of just saying let's do it Saturday, have something where they have to do the first part of it by Wednesday, and that might be a reply to a classmate. The challenge with the reply to the classmates sometimes is, what if classmates haven't, you get to a situation where it could be the end of the week if you haven't had a assignment doing the discussion before that, and then all the students are like waiting for that first comment. So I usually set up, preset comments, but I don't do like a midweek, but maybe that would help with getting
Yeah.
some activity rolling.
I'm
early.
thinking
Yeah.
of change amount in
Yeah.
classes to have a midweek post for the discussion.
Unfortunately, Canvas doesn't allow.
It's a bull.
It doesn't show that it's due that day.
See,
When they on their calendar.
That's why I put it displaying the syllabus. Like I actually have
I
it
do that
broken
too.
out line by
Yeah.
line. So it's like this component by this, response 1, response 2, date and time.
Yeah.
And then I just keep it open, the syllabus when I'm grading it. And I look what you didn't do about the, and the I guess the stick part of this is, you had the carrot earlier. And the stick part of this is if you don't post by Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, then the most you can earn is like 50%.
Yeah.
You know, it's 5 out of 10.
I know she was just sharing, Elizabeth was just sharing about how we are more prescriptive than we are, but I feel like it helps. I mean, I'm a procrastinator as a student. I was a procrastinator. I am a procrastinator as a student. I do good work at the end. I do. If I were to be in an online class, I would probably be the one that's there, the bad student, as we can maybe call it, right? So I think that I would be happier if instructors set it up this way. I think we're setting them up for success in a better way. We're giving students more access to success by making them be part of an orientation. I mean, it seems, I had a student I remember once get really upset with me in a face-to-face setting because she goes, I can't believe your 25% of your grade is attendance and participation. I go, yep. She goes, this is a college class. I shouldn't be able to come. If I didn't want to come, I shouldn't come. I go, no, you completely have the right not to come.
Yeah.
You're just going to be missing 25% of your grade. And we went into a back and forth battle, and she was so upset that I was forced, and I said,
Wow.
I feel like you have to be here in order to learn.
It's a
Well,
language
going to
class.
school is
It's a
going to
language
school.
class. I mean, that's.
But
But they
other
still-
instructors would say, for example, Bruce Armbrust,
Yeah.
I don't care if they come. But for my discipline, I feel like it's very valuable enough that 25% of your grade depends upon your presence in my class.
I'm having an issue. I had it last quarter. Maybe you can get the answer, but I get a little quiz and basically the same thing. It's almost an attendance quiz. And then leave back points.
Oh well.
So I'm trying to think about how can I deduct points.
Do the quiz at the end of class?
I'm thinking about.
Do the quiz, you don't tell them when the quiz comes.
Yeah.
It comes during
It's
the
a pop
class
quiz.
period, and it
No,
is
but then
going
once
to
the
be
quiz
pop.
happens, I'll leave.
Oh well, it's at the end.
But it won't always be at the end.
See, I think you were going back to the point about the structure building in after experimenting multiple institutions and now multiple quarters. Regulating participation is one deal. They have the latitude to explore the ideas and the issues and think and say whatever they want to say as long as they articulate them well and they draw from the reading. Because I don't make up their mind, right? So they get to pull whatever out and write about whatever. So they get that latitude, right? But the structure is regulating your participation. It's not really too prescriptive in that. I'm just saying when you have to have a component in there. What the component is what you come up with.
100%.
What?
100%. And your engagement is better.
Yeah.
Because if you have them all due on Saturday, then you're not going to get engagement. You're not going to
I'm
get.
not participating in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't, and they can respond to me. Like, one of your replies can be to me. See, I go in there and ask the questions, and you can reply to me. That's one of your two, so then you don't run into the problem of nobody saying anything.
Yeah.
Because if you write something to someone and they reply to you, then that gets the snowball.
So-
That's a perfect metaphor for living here that works. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
So when your due dates are on your due dates, do you just have the last due date on there? Or do you
Well, it's
set the due and then the until?
Well, it's open until it's Friday to Thursday.
Isn't it they have a due and
Due
then
and
an until?
So,
It's open from Friday to Thursday, but I have that at the heading at the top of the forum, and it's in the actual written syllabus. It's all structured written out.
Do you have a rubric with it?
The rubric for my history class, like, yeah, I do for like the components, like what would be 5 points out of 5, or 4 points out of 5, or whatever. Yeah. I can send it to you if you want to see it.
Yeah, that would be great.
We just got a pressure canvas to allow for a notification on both dates.
there definitely is some room for, I think, improvements in the discussions. Like with threading, I always have a thing where if the students don't thread it correctly, then they lose points unless they correct it. And the other thing would be, it would be nice if they could set up a time thing in there where you could do maybe some kind of, because Michelle Sower, the former dean, had an interesting rubric where she would give students, who posted, let's say, if it was due Saturday, you post by Wednesday, you get an extra point, right? Or you could build that into, like, if you had 10 points, maybe 2 points would be worth if you did it by Wednesday. Otherwise, the highest you could get is an 8 on Saturday. But
It's a
But
little
to me,
you have
it
to do
just
that manually.
incentivizes the students that are going to do it
Well,
anyhow.
I just
You have to do it manually.
I tell them if they do it, it's due on the initial post is due Thursday.
yeah,
But if they post by Wednesday, I promise that I will look at it, and if I were to take any points off, I'll let them know so that they can fix it.
Oh, well,
but if
that's
they post
a
on Thursday,
Ooh, that's good.
then they're just going to lose points if they make any mistakes.
Yeah.
They still can get 100%,
Yeah.
but it better be perfect. So I give them a little carrot. Carrots are important.
Yeah.
and you were eating a carrot today. Do we have it on video?
I always eat carrots.
Okay.
See,
See.
it's appropriate.
Well, I'm going to think about it because the Saturday discussion is an issue for me. The thing that does work, I have an introduction, and the students really like that, and that's where they share, and there has been active participation on that. So maybe the thought is some of the students are doing their intros, and then they'll start working maybe today. And I usually do a little nudge, Tuesday, and I say, hey, let's get some conversations going, because this is the kind of class where we want really long conversations. But the introductions are, I think, very effective because students like sharing about themselves or their pets and where they're from, their kids, whatever, their family situation. So that, I think, is always needed in an online class, and I don't do that in face-to-face. And I'm not sure why. I think it's just maybe I feel like I don't have as much time, whereas in a DE class, each student can post their bios, and it's not going to take, because to go around in a classroom of 30 to do their intros, it could take, most of the first hour. But I like that, personalization bit at the beginning, and I think that's one way to make them feel comfortable. And, and the idea that their opinions will be valued, because I'm always saying a DE class is really great because you get such diversity of ethnicity, of gender, of politics, of background, age even. I think you get a lot more diversity, I think, at least for me in my online classes.
Location.
Location. Yeah, it's a good one.
All over the state.
Yeah, I have a student in Afghanistan right now.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
In Afghanistan. I'm serving in the military.
Okay.
And I often do.
Yeah.
Do they attend your orientation?
That's on
But or they're right. Which is fine. They have a lot of time in the military, and they just sit around
Yeah.
until something horrible happens, and it's miserable. But they do have a lot of sitting time. I get a lot of military students. You guys don't get military students?
Former. I don't think.
Okay, current station military.
I don't know if I would know that.
I always get them.
Yeah. That is good.
And it's great.
Yeah.
And I don't think I've ever had a student not pass everything.
Yeah.
They probably love the different due dates and, because it's more regimented.
Yeah.
The world that they're living in, it probably is more.
And they do call me sir.
It makes the conversation better and also affords me to be able to participate in it. Because when they all wait till Saturday,
Yeah.
do you want to be hanging out on campus on Saturday afternoon? Personally, if I had a choice,
Happens.
probably not. So it just makes it easier for you, easier for them.
Yeah.
And if people don't like it, they don't have to take the
Yeah.
class. I got a guy switched to come to the on campus version this morning. So he sent me an email and he showed up at the class this morning and he said, I would prefer, if we're looking at it, I would prefer to just do it on campus and actually see you. I said, well, that's fine. Well done.
Yeah, and that's a good decision the student made. You had a student, we were talking yesterday, and a student came by and he's taking classes. He said 18 units to Chico State and taking your online class. And he asked the question, can and I get this a lot, and you said no to him, and I always say no, but he wanted to basically complete the whole class in a week or two because he was worried about his load at Chico State. So I think that's one advantage of being regimented, as many of us are, where it's like you can't just do 4 weeks at a time. Now, I'm a little more flexible. I will give maybe if they want to work a week ahead, I allow that. I just don't want them to work 4 weeks ahead because then they're missing the instruction that goes along with
It's not about the
discussions.
class. It's people. I'm sorry, I get worked up about that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think
Well,
that
no, I get
rifling
it.
through
It's-
is as bad as procrastinating,
It
and
is.
it's not really about the class.
Yeah.
It's about, I just want to get it done. And no one really, people are not inclined to learn nearly as well.
Yeah.
It's just about get it done. Get it done is not really learning. It's
Yeah.
just checking boxes. It's like regimented, but I don't know.
But sometimes, like with my military students, they need to work a week ahead, not 4 weeks, but a week ahead, because they're gonna be out shooting people or whatever they're doing for a week, and they're not gonna be able to do any work, and that's okay. But they have lots of time to do before, and they do 2 weeks of work.
And I also
week,
worry
and
about
that's
the
what I want.
actual, being able to build upon the feedback that we're supposed to get
Yeah.
as well. I mean,
Yeah.
how are you able, it's an independent study course if you're taking it to.
Correspondence almost, yeah.
Well, independent study, really.
Yeah.
Because even if, how much feedback can you give before they're working on the next lesson?
Exactly. And let me ask you this too. Do you honestly think that if everybody wanted to do that, the course could be over in 2 weeks? And do you really want to grade everything in 2 weeks? Like if that happened to a bunch of people, if you had a disproportionate number of people who said, because I noticed for the online classes, people talk to people. And then also they start getting these emails that say, well, I talked to so-and-so. And I'm just like, why are you talking to so-and-so? Talk to me because I'm the instructor. But the bottom line is, if a bunch of people all wanted to race ahead, well then all of a sudden a bunch of those people are expecting you to grade all that work within a week or two. And if you have 5 papers and 4 forums and 2 exams and everything else, I'm like, I'm not going to be grading something that's technically due in late February next week. I'm sorry, I'm not going to do that.
That's fine. Wait till after the due date.
It's not really a choice, yeah.
Yeah, wait till after the due date and grade it.
That's what I do.
Yeah.
But they wouldn't get the feedback, right?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I only get a week early. I never had only 1 week early. But a week early happens. There's nothing wrong with that. If it's an exceptional case, they're having a baby or they're in the military. I mean, with online students,
I think a week is different than
Yeah.
what we're talking about.
I mean,
Yeah.
4 weeks, I've never
A
had
week
students.
ahead
Yeah.
is different than.
Yeah,
4
he wanted,
weeks.
well, he
I
said
never-
a week, but he wanted more.
No, it sounded like he wanted like 3 or 4 weeks.
He wanted a month or
Yeah.
more. Here's my thought. Why don't you just take the class at a different time?
Yeah.
Like the summer.
Well, or, schools they're on a semester system. It's very common to have a winter semester, and that's very short.
Yeah,
You
that's
planned
true.
your course then to finish it in 2 weeks. I mean, that usually is just about, and it's very intense.
Yeah.
And I guess it is kind of like an independent study. But those teachers are then prepared that, okay, I'm teaching one class over winter semester, and this is what it is, and all of them together are going to finish it X date.
Yes.
But it's a huge commitment. A lot of people think they can just like rocket through it, and actually, no, it's
Yeah,
still a lot of work. But it's common in other contexts. It's just not here. So.
In Houston, I taught three Mays. I taught them. It's called a mini-mester. It's 3 weeks. Every day is a week of material. And then but everyone would think because it's 3 weeks, you're just going to chop something out. I'm like, no, we meet 3 hours and 5 minutes each day for 3 weeks. And the people who would come from University of Texas at Austin, they could handle it, just picking up credits. The other people, sometimes not so much because they would just think you're going to chop out a lot. No, I taught the same class. So I had a paper to grade practically every night.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you do a summer 6 class, it's hard for the instructor and the students to try to pack everything in the same amount, 11 weeks into 6 weeks. And I was going to say the other area where we've talked about, we won't have time to discuss today, but with ISP, I know a lot of us have had conversations about this whole issue of feedback because of things outside of our control, and even outside the ISP office's control in terms of, there's a lockdown or the mail is delayed or whatever. And so feedback in ISP is a challenge too in that sense because you worry about a student, and I've had students who did 6 modules at a time, and it's like, is that student really benefiting from your feedback from the previous 5 modules? Probably not. So there are issues there, that you don't have in a face-to-face class that you have with DE, ISP. We're getting a little close on time. Damion, do you want to get in any thoughts? Just like, what's on your mind the first week of the quarter here? Do you roll out?
I think
winter?
Sarah touched a little bit on it, and everyone did, is just creating a positive learning environment for people, finding ways to really improve that in all the classes I teach. I mean, the introduction is a great way for, I always love classes where peer interaction happens and student learning happens that way. So those introductions are good ways for people to break the ice, basically. It's important for a women's classes and when we go out to locations that we have that sort of bonding.
Which class are you teaching?
I'm teaching, this quarter I'm teaching intermediate rock climbing movement.
Great.
I would say one other way, just from what Damion just said, that instead of going around to every single student in classes like yours, I think you can I usually get to class about 2, 3, 5 minutes early, and I tell the students, turn to the person next to you, and anybody that can hear you, and tell them, what's your favorite superhero? I mean, I'm thinking of other things you can do. Give them like an icebreaker question. I'm from here. This is my name. Because I feel like oftentimes they come in, they sit down, it's like super quiet, and no one wants to say anything. And I instantly break that. And I say, anybody that you can see or hear, you need to tell them your name, where you're from, why you're studying Spanish, why do you think it's interesting, X, Y, Z. And I think that is like a 1 minute to 2 minute thing, and it gets that connection going.
Yeah.
Even if you're not doing the whole snaky.
Like a mini interview.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
And you could put up even a funny question up there. If you could be one superhero, what would it be?
Yeah.
I mean, I know Scott Valentine does that in there, and it kind of breaks them out of their, you know, there's so much variation what we have in class. There's
Yeah.
so much variation of, you know, diversity
Mhm.
that I think it is nice to have that connect. Oh, that guy's from here. I've been there.
Mhm.
Or this woman's from here. That's great, you know.
Share connections. That's
I
right.
asked students questions, but see, I bring it in content.
Yeah.
And then I analyze the answers
Just
from
context.
data and statistics and try to meet them. So I pull up, they introduce themselves, and we pull up the data on a spreadsheet, and then we analyze it.
Why am I
and
not
that's what we do
surprised?
first week. And that's what we do first week.
What did you say?
Why am I not surprised?
But you might as well, you know, then you can actually do it, you're not wasting time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But especially in courses like yours, where conversation and discussion is going to be so important
Mhm.
as you progress through
Yeah.
to create that learning, to create the safety with others around them.
Yeah.
It probably takes some time, I would imagine.
Yeah, it does.
I front load, and particularly in the race class, the gender class, I always front load a ton of stuff about safe spaces, discuss what you're comfortable discussing, and, you know, and clearly defining hate speech and things you can and cannot say, because it can turn into a free-for-all, as we know, in online social science classes. So I'm actively like thinking about that in most days. So yeah, absolutely. But that level of comfort important. Well, great. I think we'll wrap it up. Big takeaways is, I guess, making students feel comfortable, and that issue of structure versus openness, particularly with DE class, is probably a good conversation for future talks. So thank you all for attending, virtual attendance, whoever you are, thank you so much. And we'll have our next one on the 21st, and it'll be bring your favorite teaching method. And you can even demo it if you want. So a little pressure there if you want to bring your favorite teaching method, talk about it. Or it could be your least effective teaching method. To be a little honest about that. So
Lessons that went wrong.
Lessons that went wrong.
Dispatches from the Boulevard of Broken Dreams.
Yeah. Okay, thank you all. All right, have a good rest of your day.